You'll know that currently the Railway Development Levy is established through regulations that were brought by the Cabinet Secretary sometime in the 11th Parliament. This is in the 11th Parliament when it was established. And the amendments in this bill now seek to establish the Railway Development Levy Fund through an Act of Parliament, should this bill come into being. Additionally, Honourable Speaker and Honourable Members, the proposed amendments to, in this bill seek to expand the use of the Railway Development Levy Fund, or what we popularly refer to as RDLF, to include development, construction, upgrading, rehabilitation, and management of railway infrastructure and railway-related transport infrastructure. Honourable Speaker, the regulations that came from the Cabinet Secretary initially at the inception of this levy was for the development of the SGR, or the standard gauge railway, that levy was to be used for the development of the standard gauge railway. And what we are seeking to do now is to expand that mandate through an Act of Parliament, so that the fund or the levy, as it may be, is not restricted to just development and maintenance of the SGR, the standard gauge railway, but now to expand it to even take care of other related railway infrastructure, and also the metric gauge railway, and also in the development of rail transportation in this country, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, as we move towards a first world nation, we cannot continue doing ordinary things. We cannot continue transporting our people in ramshackles of public transportation in one or the other, or in very unsafe means. We are moving towards a situation where passengers between Ngong Town and the CBD, or between Kitengela or Isinya to CBD, or those coming from Thika or from Limuru or from Machakos, can use a tram rail that you can alight from your, the new Jomo Kenyatta Airport, from your flight overseas. And to go to Kitengela, you just take a tram from the airport and you find yourself in Kitengela within a few minutes, or to Ngong or to Kikuyu in that matter, Honourable Speaker. And therefore, the levy, the regulation that established this Railway Development Fund had restricted its use to only the development and maintenance of the SGR. And therefore, you could not use it to develop the metric gauge rail. You could not use this fund to develop a tram, for instance, such a passenger tram around the city. And because we are looking into moving into the first world nation, or towards Singapore, as it has been christened, we very soon will have trams in this city. We have trams in many of our urban centers around the city and other cities in the country, towns around the country. And we can only do that if we have secure funds to be able to develop such infrastructure. And therefore, if we continue limiting this levy, and this levy, Honourable Speaker, I think when it started, I can't remember well, but I think we started at 0.5%, and is now almost, I think, 1.7 or 1.5 from the last finance bill. And that fund, the way it has grown, it is now adequate to be able to maintain and construct SGR, but also to help us to develop other rail infrastructure and rail-related transport infrastructure, including stations, Honourable Speaker, and exchange stations in our towns. And you know, many of our towns, including my own town in Kikuyu, grew out of a railway station. In fact, when I was growing up, Honourable Speaker, my town in Kikuyu used to be called Shesheni. And Shesheni was a corruption of station, the railway station town. And therefore, we will be able to develop more modern railway stations, tram stations, SGR stations, metric gauge stations, and even cargo transportation inland depots along the railway line, either SGR or the metric gauge. And therefore, Honourable Speaker, again, what we intend to do with these amendments is to expand, as I said, from maintenance and construction of SGR to development, construction, upgrading, because there are some areas where the metric gauge railway needs to be upgraded. Rehabilitation, there are areas, again, we need to rehabilitate the old railway, and management of the railway infrastructure and railway-related transport infrastructure. Honourable Speaker, the other intent of the bill is to create, since you are now converting it under an act of parliament into a fund, we will need a board to manage the fund. And again, the bill in a big way speaks to how much, how that fund, the board will be established, and I don't need to go into that, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, as I said, for context, the Railway Development Levy was initially at 1.5%, not 0.5%, as I indicated, of the customs value of imported goods. And subsequently, through subsequent finance bills, we have revised that to now 2%, which we did in the 2024 tax amendment laws of 2024, and is now expressly provided for in Section 8.2 of the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act at 2%. And therefore, from that 1.5% initially to 2%, that's why I'm saying we can now expand the mandate of this levy to be able to take care of other infrastructure needs. Honourable Speaker, we constructed SGR Phase 1 from Mombasa to Nairobi. And in the subsequent years, post-2017, we did the Nairobi to what has been christened the railway to nowhere. The railway SGR went and terminated somewhere after Suswa, around Dukamoja, in a bush somewhere. We cannot afford to continue having that railway terminating somewhere in a bush and it being christened the railway to nowhere. That railway must end up somewhere. That railway must get to Kisumu, must get to Eldoret. That railway must be the railway that will transport our oil from Turkana to Mombasa. That rail must be able to transport our tea from the highlands of Bomet and Kericho to the auction in Mombasa. That railway must be able to effectively and efficiently be able to transport raw materials from our hinterland to our industries in Nairobi, in Mombasa, and other major urban centers. That is why, Honourable Speaker, we need this bill, like yesterday. And Honourable Speaker, that rail cannot be constructed using loans again. It is not going to be feasible. Remember, initially, we had designated this levy to repayment of that loan for SGR. That, over the years, substantially has been reduced, and we now must look beyond having a levy that just serves the purpose of repayment of a loan. We must be able to leverage on these funds to be able to grow that infrastructure in the rail transportation area, to be able to finish our SGR to Malaba, to Kisumu, all the way to Uganda, or our border to Uganda at Malaba, take it another line to Kericho, Eldoret, go all the way to Turkana, linking up to Isiolo and back to Nairobi and to Mombasa, Honourable Speaker. Because that is the only way we'll be able to effectively evacuate the crude oil that will be drilled, courtesy of the approval you did for the Lokicha wells last week. And I can see the members from Turkana nodding in agreement, because they know that if Kikuyu, if Nakuru, if Limuru, if Thika, if Kericho, if Eldoret became the towns and the cities they are today because they grew out of along the railway line, then Nedapar, Lokichogio, Lokichar, Lodwa must also get to the same level with other towns and cities in this country. And we cannot do that without interconnecting our towns, our cities, our villages. And this is what will help us to cure that systemic marginalization that has been there in this country. And that is why, Honourable Speaker, I want to urge all of us to support this bill. Honourable Speaker, since this levy, we are importing goods every now and then. This fund continues to grow and the levy continues to grow. And therefore, we have a good opportunity to be able to leverage on this levy to even be able to raise more money globally, to be able to do those huge infrastructure projects that we need to be able to move our country to the next level. Honourable Speaker, I may sound like I'll be repeating myself because I know many members have read the bill, I've gone through the bill and the report that Honourable GK tabled earlier this week. And we, again, just like I've said of the other bill, we will be able to consider this bill in committee. The amendments that have been proposed by the Committee of Transport and Infrastructure, we shall be able to consider them at that point. And also any that may come from the issues that members contribute during this debate. Honourable Speaker, is important also because when you create these funds, at times, and I had that concern yesterday as we contributed on the National Infrastructure Fund bill, people may think administrative expenses is an opportunity now to go out and spend whatever you want to spend. We are very careful that in all these levies we restrict and embed in this legislation a safeguard of capping the expenditure levels beyond which you can't go. And this bill embeds that strong safeguard to protect the fund from depletion through administrative expenses, which have been capped at 0.5% of the total fund to ensure that the funds are not consumed in the usual office bureaucracies to buy tea, flowers, a lot of expensive carpets, Honourable Speaker, to ensure that this fund, the levy that is collected from our imports, goes towards the development of rail infrastructure, Honourable Speaker. I look forward, Honourable Speaker, to the transformation of this country, which I have no doubt now. And I must thank members of this House. As the President said during his State of the Nation address last year, this 13th Parliament has a whole chapter in the rewriting of the history of the transformation of our country. Because why not for the fortitude of the members of this 13th Parliament to withstand the hate-mongering, the negativity that had been embedded in our society over the last 2-3 years, we would not be where we are as a country. This economy has been resilient because of your sacrifice, because of your focus on doing what is good for the country. That even at times when we differ, and that's what I was saying even in the previous debate about Honourable Oundo and Honourable Makali Mulu, we differ at times in principle, and we debate and agree to disagree, and at times we agree to agree. And that is how we should conduct business in this House. Therefore, for those of us who look at every other legislative proposal coming from the government, in government bills, as an opportunity to oppose and fight for the sake of opposing, I think you're in the wrong place. But it's not in my place to tell you in the wrong place. Your constituents at the right time will send you back where you belong if you do not act in the best interest of the people who sent you here to legislate, oversight, and represent them. Part of that representation is to ensure that you legislate progressive legislative proposals that will improve the lives of the people that have sent you here. This is such one proposal, just like the National Infrastructure Fund is one such proposal that will speak to the hearts of millions of our people, millions of our young people who today are languishing in poverty because they have no job opportunities, because our economy is so constricted, because we have done the same things over and over again and expecting different results. And indeed, I had one member, the member I was referring to, who is fond of speaking in lecture halls to try and look intelligent. Well, at the end of it all, when you listen, there's a lot of hollowness in what they are saying that the things that you want to do with this National Infrastructure Fund have been done since time immemorial. And I asked myself, honestly, if you are as educated as you want Kenyans to believe, you should be honest enough to tell them that what has been done since time immemorial is what has not worked in this country. That is why the northern parts of Kenya are the way they are. That is why parts of Narok North, farmers who are working diligently day and night to grow maize for this country, to feed the country, wheat, cannot transport their produce to the nearest market in Narok town because of the state of roads. But because we depended on only budgetary allocations to be able to grow our infrastructure and develop our infrastructure. That is why our country is where it is. And indeed, I've severally agreed with His Excellency the President when he says that the biggest problem in this country is leadership. That is what has hindered the growth of this nation, leadership. I want to challenge us as members of the 13th Parliament. We have exhibited leadership in supporting progressive ideas like the National Housing Levy Fund. That in a big way is transforming every corner of our republic. This afternoon, you have just passed in second reading the National Infrastructure Fund. That you will bear me witness in the next few years. It will be a critical tool, investment tool, in the transformation of our republic. When you go into elections next year, we will be talking of new SGRs, courtesy of such a bill as this Railway Development Fund bill, new airports, courtesy of the National Infrastructure Fund bill, and many other developments, including the dams that I had members from the northern parts of Kenya and even the coast. I had Honourable Harrison Kombe speak to about how productive certain parts of Magarini are. But they cannot grow food because they don't have water. Yet they could have harvested that water. Or Galana Kulalu alone could feed the whole of Kilifi County. In fact, not Kilifi. Galana Kulalu can feed half of our country today. All we need is water. And you know, Honourable Speaker, when last year the President said that something about rain and water, people are making fun of it, saying, oh, now Ruto has told us we don't need rain, we need water. And it is true. What you need rain for is to provide you with water. And if you can have reservoirs for water to irrigate our farmland, we can feed this country and avoid the shame of Kenyans having to live without food or the indignity of having to feed our people from relief food. Honourable Speaker, let me not belabor those many points. And I beg to move and urge all of us to support this very progressive piece of legislation. And your place in history, and indeed in heaven, is secure when you pass this bill. Because you are doing God's work by improving the lives of the people of Kenya. They have charged you with that singular responsibility, you amongst many other in your constituency, to come here and legislate to improve their lives. Don't politic with it. Don't just oppose for the sake of opposing. Legislate for the future of our country, for our children and generations to come. I beg to move and request Honourable GK, the chair of the committee that considered this bill, to second.
Thank you, Honourable Majority Leader. Honourable Speaker, I beg to second this. This House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure on the consideration of the miscellaneous fees and levies amendment bill, National Assembly Bill number 57 of 2025, which I laid on the table of the House on Tuesday this week. Honourable Speaker, pursuant to National Assembly Standing Orders number 2161C